season of the Scottdale Church Dartball League. We're going to start off with an invocation from Pastor Yager. Doug?
Thank you, man. Can everybody hear me from here?
Yeah. You're good.
Welcome. Thank you where we were a few weeks back. Most of the things done, I used to go home and watch TV for an 82-year-old woman got kidnapped in her front yard in Phoenix. They still have it. How about this war? They had a war now for 46 weeks, and it's still going on. And how about this assassination thing? It just doesn't go away, does it? Seems like we just had one last night. We did have one last night. And people ask us why we play Dartball. To get away from all that stuff. We enjoy our fellowship with each other. Work out on weekday nights. Shows the bars. After champions. Shifts and things that are broadcast on the local even. On the cable or on TV. It's great to have. It's a great thing for us to blow off steam and glare some things. There are a couple other people I'd like to share with you real briefly before we do the invocation. One was a guy by the name of Casey. He played on our team on the side. And he was probably about 14 years old. And I hadn't seen him for 2 or 3 years anyhow. And about a week ago, I was in Martin's in Scottdale, and I hear, Pastor Doug, Pastor Doug. Who's calling me Pastor Doug? It was James. Of course, James wasn't this big anymore. James was about this big. And he about 50 feet off the ground with a bear out. I hadn't seen him for a while. He says, I miss all you guys. He said, I miss the Christian fellowship. You don't get that anymore. Pretty cool for a kid that maybe 16, 17 years old. He's doing that recognition already. And some of us take years before we figure that out. Yes, we do enjoy that fellowship. And there was another fellow. He's no longer with us. His name was Jeremy. And he joined Dartball and Fair County League, where I also played. And he was probably his third. And he had received 4 tattoos on his arm. He was about 6.5 feet tall. Weighed about 300 or so pounds. Nice guy, but we were going to be able to down the way he's here today. But he was a great guy. After he started playing well with Dartball, he changed. He accepted Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. He got married in the church. He got counseling in the church. He got married. He was a real product of what Robby and he can tell you to this day. He was here. Dartball brought him in because he needed some fellowship. And it's that kind of thing that's good for him. So for Jeremy and for Kane, for all of us here, let's not forget that we came here for fellowship and we're leaving because they're Christians. So let us pray, Lord. Almighty God, you pour out the Spirit of grace and supplication on all who deserve. Deliver us from cold hearts and wandering thoughts, that with steady minds and burning zeal, we may worship you in spirit and in truth, through Jesus Christ. And through Jesus Christ, let us pray. Lord, bless this food to our bodies. Bless these hours together. May they become cherished as we look back as time goes by. Lord, we thank you. We thank you for this fellowship. We thank you for making us fellow Christians by having us come here. We ask all this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we'll start eating here. We'll start with the head table. And then Becky, the young lady right there, will tell you guys the order to come up. So we'll start first. catering tonight. The food was very good. Very good. Start off with our annual memorial service. Pastor Yarger wants to come up and join me here.
Second thing, I haven't given one.
Got a list of 8 fellas who passed away since we last met. I also want to let everybody know that the Hack Junket is in Marvin House. How's he doing? Not good. Not good. So we want to remember Hack too right now. So on our list this year, Chuck Wise played a few seasons for Lutheran and Reform. Bill Schomer played a few seasons for Emerson. Bryce King played a few seasons for Hickory Square and CUMC. Chuck Bowman played a few seasons for the Church of Christ and CUMC. Dick Wills played a few seasons for Tyrone. Brian Kelly played 31 seasons for Church of Christ Reformed and CUMC. But only 12 of those seasons did he have over 100 caps. He kept coming back every year, playing every now and then, and Brian had 993 hits. Didn't quite make the Hall of Fame. I know he wanted to, but didn't happen. Rick Mates played 17 seasons for United Presbyterian. He was a Hall of Famer with over 1,300 hits. Jay Copenhagen played 35 seasons, 7 with CUMC, 28 with St. John. He was a Hall of Famer with over 2,900 hits.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we know and appreciate that you have left these heaven's doors still wide open for new additions to your Dartball team out there. We look forward to moving them in a particular hurry, joining them somewhere in the future. We thank you for all the fellowship, the learning, the fun, and the fact that, again, working for you makes us better Christians. And we hope that heaven welcomes these folks as they have raised us into their presence for the last number of years. In God's name we pray, amen.
Amen. Okay, we're going to go on to our speaker here. Our speaker tonight, Robby Incmikoski. I want to thank Robby for coming, taking his time to be here with us tonight. We can all thank John Malone for lining this up with Robby. Robby was a South Philly kid. Became a ball boy for the Philadelphia Eagles and worked in their training room. Maybe we'll hear some stories about that. Robby spent 16 seasons as a field reporter / host of television broadcasts for the Minnesota Twins, Pittsburgh Pirates, and Texas Rangers. I'm sure you saw and heard him many times in his 10-year hockey career, having conversations with broadcasters, interviewing families in the stand, in the post-game interviews, that a lot of times included ice showers and shaving cream facials. Tell us some stories about that. Those post-game interviews actually created twice for Robby to run a baseball card produced by Cost. Once with a facial shower from A.J. Burnett giving it to Pedro Alvarez, and once an ice bath for Michael Perez. Additionally, Robby has served as a TV reporter for several other teams, the Phoenix Coyotes, the Phoenix Suns, Minnesota Timberwolves, University of Minnesota Hockey, Minnesota Wild, all before coming to Pittsburgh. Robby's always had a passion for ballparks, and I'm excited to hear about that passion. Through his work, he's been to all 30 Major League Baseball fields. And he's written a book called right here, Sacred Grounds. Very good book, very well done book, very professional. Where he highlights stories from each stadium. I read the PNC Park chapter. One of the pictures he included was the photographer's well. In that well is Dave Arrigo. You all remember Dave Barriga, the team photographer for the Pirates? He spoke here about 15 years ago. Sacred Grounds, Robby, is certainly a fitting name for baseball stadiums. I remember being on Mount Washington the day they imploded Three River Stadium. A lot of people clapped and cheered. I couldn't, because I said, it's my house of worship. They just blew it up. Same thing. And think about what we do here at Dartball. We're just a bunch of little boys, especially me, playing baseball in sacred grounds, our churches. So thank you, Robby, for writing a book that little boys can appreciate. I get it. I've taken my love for baseball, Dartball, statistics, lists, and turned it into this that we make every year. Some might call it mental disease. But don't laugh, because next season will be my 50th season in this league. And if you find the page, the list, the top seasons played, there will be 14 guys above me, 11 of you are still alive, and most of you are in this room. So, if I have a mental disease, I have covered. But I remember a quote from Jim Bowden. You guys know Jim Bowden, who wrote Ball 4, pitched in Major Leagues to the Yankees, Pilots, a couple other teams. He wrote a tell-all book called Ball 4. But he said, you spend a good piece of your life gripping a baseball or a dart, but in the end, it turns out it's the other way around. So, gentlemen, I give you Robby Incmikoski and Sacred Grounds.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, John. Thank you all for having me here. So the story starts September 3rd, 2024. It was a Tuesday night, and I was hanging out in the south side of Pittsburgh at a bar called Mario's. I don't know if any of you have been to Mario's. It's been open since 1982. It's a legendary bar. I see people of all different ages who have been there. There are 21-year-old kids hanging out there now, and I was there Friday night, my most recent trip there. And one of my best friends sent me a text message the night before. And I got a group of guys that love baseball just like I love baseball. And I love Dartball, by the way, and I haven't even thrown one single dart. This looks like a hell of a lot of fun. I would love to join you guys one night if the opportunity ever presented itself, because I love darts and I love baseball. And I've never heard of Dartball. But anyways, we're hanging out, or he sends us a text Monday night and says, Paul Skeens is pitching at Wrigley Field tomorrow. Do you want to go to Mario's? Because our friend was bartending that night. And I said, absolutely, I'm in. So we get there before the game starts, and it's 4 of us in the bar. My 2 buddies, myself, and Jimmy, who owns the place, who was also bartending that night. And Skeens is throwing 5 innings of shutout baseball, impressive Rookie of the Year on his way to winning the NL Rookie of the Year award. And about the 6th, 7th inning, we start feeling pretty good. The shots start flowing, small group of people, we have a good time. At around 1:15 in the morning, my buddy Paul Hogan turns over to me. He's at about a .2 at this point. And he looks over at me with one eye half open and he says, I think I have the name for your book. And I'm like, you are crazy. You are, no, we're not doing this right now, 1:15 in the morning in this shape. He goes, no, I'm serious. I have a name for your book. He grabs a bar napkin right out of the bar caddy. He asks Jimmy for a pen, and he starts drawing. I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is the napkin he wrote on that night. Okay, it's in a frame. It says Sacred Grounds by Robby Incmikoski featuring Paul Hogan. So this is how my book got its name, on a drunken night at Mario's in the South Side. And on page 226, I dedicated a page to my book along with a picture of this napkin and a picture of the 4 of us who were there that night. in sacred ground, so it's a pretty cool story. So please, if you guys are, I don't know if anybody's interested in taking a look at it, but you're welcome to, and pass it around. Just don't break it, please. Or if you break it, just don't break the napkin. The napkin's the most valuable thing in there. So that's how this whole thing kind of got started. It's crazy to see what was a concept ended up becoming reality and became my book, which was my passion project. But first, I want to ask a question to the group, and that is, let's see if I can get my mouse. So I'm sure many of you guys in here remember a broadcaster and a player the Pirates had named Steve Blass. I see a lot of head nods, so a lot of you know who Steve Blass is. He is the single funniest human being I've ever been around in my entire life. Can anybody say, snap your fingers if you've met Steve Blass? A few of you have met him. Did he make you laugh?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, one of my best, I've got a lot of them, but my Steve Blass story is amazing. So this picture was taken right before Steve's last game began. It was actually, if I remember correctly, it was either a rain delay or it was right before the game. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure we got delayed by rain that night. So it was 2013 in spring training when my boss brought me to the broadcast area at what is now known as Lee Cobb Park, formerly known as McKechnie Field, where the Pirates had played their spring training games for a very long time. And Steve and Greg Brown were doing a game that was on the internet, which means they're basically freewheeling it from the first pitch to the last, and it's basically the Greg and Steve show, because not many people are listening. So my boss is walking me through the press box and introduced me to everybody. It's my first ever time in Bradenton and my first time at McKechnie Field. So Steve turns around as I'm being introduced to Greg Brown and Steve, and my boss says, "Hey, Steve, meet Robby." "Hi, Steve, I'm Robby. It's a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to working with you." And at this point in time, I didn't know a ton about Steve other than what I've seen from his World Series for Robs. I didn't know a lot about the history and just exactly what it is that he meant to baseball in the city of Pittsburgh. So Steve takes his headset off, he turns around and shakes my hand. I said, "Steve, it's an honor to meet you. I can't wait to work with you." He looks over and goes, "Nice to meet you." And he says, "Robby, I'm 70 years old." I said, "Okay, that's pretty cool." He goes, "You know the best part about being 70? I said, "No, I don't." He said, "At 7:30 every morning, I take a huge shit." So I was like, first thing you ever said to me after I met you. I said, "All right." He paused. He said that at 8 o'clock I wake up. That, my friends, is what it was like working with Steve Blass every home game for 7 years until he retired. He's unbelievable. So Steve, Greg, myself, we spent 7 years together, and I was fortunate enough to spend 11 years with the Pirates announcing their games. I spent 4 years with the Minnesota Twins, 11 with the Pirates, and then after I got let go at the end of the 2023 season, I got a phone call from Texas asking if I'd be interested in being the backup with the Texas Rangers. And it was cool working for the defending World Series champs on basically a halftime basis. I did like 65, 70 games as a backup, and that was pretty cool. So it was a real fun experience getting a chance to do something like that. And obviously, we spent a lot of time working with Bob Walk as well. I'm sure many of you know who Bob is. To me, he was a World Series hero for the 1980 Phillies. He was the winning pitcher in Game 1. And he's just an incredibly good man. And I'm honored to have Bob, a couple of Bob's stories in sacred ground. So that was a real cool experience. So I always look at a guy named Vince Scully. This is a room full of baseball fans, right? It has to be, right? Assume if you're playing Dartball, you love the game of baseball. So Vince Scully, me personally, I think he's the greatest broadcaster in the history of broadcasting. And what's cool is, in 2016, it was his final year. It was his his final year with the LA Dodgers. And he's such a nice guy, Vin, that they had a camera and lights set up, a digital camera in the booth. So anybody that came by and wanted pictures with Vin were able to get one. And I had asked the stage manager if he could take my phone and just take a couple pictures of me taking a picture with Vin. And every time a team came in, there were minimum of 20 to 30 people between broadcasters, players, coaches, clubhouse managers, trainers, traveling secretaries, you name it, everybody wanted a piece of Vin. And he did the very best he could to fit as many people as he could into his schedule. So I walked into the booth, I was eating dinner, and Vin had just gotten done eating a little bit before me, and I'm hustling in. Vin's sitting there, he goes, "Where you been?" I said, "Vin, I heard you wanted a picture with me." So I walked in, and that's what made him laugh. So I got a cool picture, and this is what the real one ended up looking like, and it's one of the coolest photos that I own. A picture in the Dodger Stadium booth with Vin Scully, where he broadcasted games for over 60 years, which is incredible. Involved dodging a lot of water and Gatorade baths in my time. After a while, you kind of become a little bit numb to it because it happens all the time. And fortunately, I was able to collect some photos. People like Adam Frazier trying to pull me into one of those. That's Jamison Tyone, his rookie year in 2016. That's 2013, Jordy Mercer, Andrew McCutcheon in San Diego. I don't even remember what year that was. But sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes they sneak up behind you, like A.J. Burnett did, and whack me with a pie, a shaving cream pie, right in my face. But like the baseball player I'm not, I was able to keep going with the interview. And then, for good measure, they decided to dump a jug of water on me, which was a lot of fun. The other thing, too, is there's a lot of big moments. A lot of people know Adam Wainwright as a pirate killer, which indeed he was. There's no doubt about it. But Adam Wainwright is one of the nicest human beings on planet Earth. And this was his final year. It was our last trip to St. Louis. The Pirates were not going to make the playoffs. And I said, I need to get a one-on-one with Adam Wainwright to just talk about his career, what it's like being a pirate killer. What kind of joy did you take? And he said he regretted nothing. But he loved competing against the Pirates, and he loved pitching, especially in those mid-2010s when the Pirates were really, really competitive for that 3-year span in 2013, 14, and 15. And then I did a little tour where we set up some fun graphics with Wayno, and we took him around PNC Park and heckled him along the way, and he was a great sport about it. In fact, Adam tweeted this photo of myself, Greg, and him, which is pretty cool. You develop a lot of relationships along the way, and you get a chance to see a lot of cool relationships like this one. That's Josh Bell, who's still playing in the big leagues in the middle. And on the right is the first guy ever from the continent of Africa to play Major League Baseball. Do you remember that story? Remember his name on the right? I'm not trying to trick you, but I'm curious. What's that? Bingo. Who said that? Like that. Dan Geary, right on the money. Gift Ngobe. And what's interesting about that is one of Gift's best friends in the system was a guy named Dovydas Nikolauskas, who was a relief pitcher. So Gift, the first ever player from Africa to make Major League Baseball, made his debut the night before the first player born and raised in Lithuania to make his Major League debut. So the Pirates had a little unique piece of history on back-to-back nights with that. What's really cool is Dan was kind enough, had a chance to be on 2 baseball cards, but I only have a picture of this one, which is pretty cool. I'm going to get into a couple stories, and then we'll get a little interactive with this. But some of the cool experiences involved this one. So this was at Target Field. This is April 12, 2010. This was the first ever game played at Target Field in downtown Minneapolis. And these are 3 umpires. That's Tim Sheeta, that's Jeff Nelson, and that's Mark Wagner. Those 3 umpires are born and raised in Minnesota. And Major League Baseball does something really cool that fans may not realize is when a new stadium opens, if there are umpires that are from that state or from that city, even though they were not on the same crew, Major League Baseball scheduled those 3 together to work the first ever series at Target Field. So we had a chance to talk to 3 Minnesota natives before they worked the first ever game at outdoor baseball in Minnesota since the old Metropolitan Stadium. So it had been a long time that the Twins were in the Metrodome and were able to have outdoor baseball, so that's a pretty cool experience. Ellen DeGeneres, had a legendary talk show, attended her first baseball game ever, and it was at Target Field. I had the opportunity to interview her. I said, Ellen, I'm sure you've been to many, many baseball games in your life, or at least thrown out a first pitch. She said, no. This was right before we went on camera. We did the interview. It ended up on the front page of yahoo.com the next day. Ellen DeGeneres goes to her first baseball game. So again, it's nice to look back on a few cool moments. Hang out with people like Eddie Vedder. He lives in Seattle, is a huge Cubs fan, and goes to quite a few Mariners games. And people may recognize Doc Emmerich, who I admire as the greatest hockey broadcaster in the history of the sport. He loves the Pittsburgh Pirates. For whatever reason, he loves the Pirates, and every year he would come to spring training and broadcast the game with us. And it was the coolest thing in the world. And the one thing about Doc Emmerich, what made him great, is his preparation. The guy prepared like no other. He was the best. And he comes up to me before the game, and he goes, Robby, can you help me with a couple pronunciations? I said, sure, I don't think you're going to have to use them, Doc, but I'll answer any question you have. So we go over some pronunciations, and he starts taking notes. And I looked, I'm like, Doc, what the hell is that? Oh, these are some notes I put together. Come on, no way. This is what he put together. That's for a spring training game in March that he was a guest in the booth for. And this is the amount of work that he put in. And for those of you in the back, Clint Earl, Joey Cora, Kumar Barti, Tom Prince, Ray Sears, the coaching staff. He's got every player. He's got Penguins standings. He's got hockey standings here. History of the World Series. He's got Jacob Stallings, his kid that was born in there. Notes on his son. It's unbelievable the amount of work that Doc Emmerich put into something. I don't think he used one note off of this. And he prepped all this. And that gave me a chance to see what made some of these great broadcasters great. The preparation, how great they are at the craft, how hard they work at it. And to get a chance to get a front row seat next to Doc Emmerich to do even one baseball game of the year is one of my life's honors. And then one day it all comes to a close, you lose your job. Not only that, you end up on the front page of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette for losing your job. So that was a hell of a moment for me to wake up to a bunch of messages saying, hey, your picture's on the front page of the paper the day after I lost my job. Not exactly a lot of fun, right? So that's what takes us here to Sacred Grounds, which is my passion project. So, and I'm not trying to turn this into a PSA about this book, but the book is about stories and the relationships and what makes baseball great. The wins and the losses happen, people remember them, people forget them. You get your heart broken, sometimes you're happy as hell that your team won. They scored 5 runs at the bottom of the ninth and walked off the opponent, or the other team scored 5 in the ninth and walked off your favorite team. Happened a lot when I was with the Pirates, believe me. One thing I learned in my career is PR spin. Try spending 11 years trying to get Pirate fans to love Bob Nutter. That'll touch you. And I will say, for the record, Bob is an extremely nice man. He's a very good man who treats his employees very well. Obviously, he's not very popular with Pirate fans. They didn't spend a lot of money on free agents. But I'm really happy to see the team doing as well as they are this year. And I do think they're going to be a playoff team. But Sacred Grounds is about the stories. And how this came about was, in 2017, the Pirates were having opening day at Fenway Park. So I went to Best Buy, and I said I wanted to buy a digital camera. And around that time, late 2016, early 2017, cell phone cameras were getting really good, which meant the price of digital cameras started to drop pretty significantly. So for about, I think I paid $400, $450. I paid for this camera, which is really good. It's a Sony digital camera, it fits right in my pocket. And I said, I'm not going to be doing this job forever, so I want to take pictures of every ballpark, because I was always fascinated with baseball stadiums. If you think about it, when you look at the NBA, every court is the same size. When you look at hockey, a hockey rink is 200 feet by 85 feet. It's the same. You look at a football field, 100 yards with a 10-yard end zone on each side. I don't know how wide a football field is, but the dimensions are exactly the same. When you get into baseball, that's where the creativity starts to come to life. Everything is different about a baseball stadium, and they connect a team with its city. You look at the Ivy at Wrigley, the Monster at Fenway Park. You look at the pool in Arizona, the rock pile in Colorado, the bridges at PNC Park. You look at the light towers in Cincinnati, and the power stacks, which many of you, I don't know if you realize this, we look in right center field in Cincinnati. Have you ever noticed the power stacks with the baseball bats in the top? If you ever see a game in Cincinnati, look up top, you'll see 2 power stacks. There's 7 bats in each one. And that is the Reds' silent tribute and their silent middle finger to Major League Baseball for not letting them retire Pete Rose's number. So there's 7 bats in each power stack to equal 14 as a tribute to Pete Rose that's been there from day one. So it's little stuff like that, because I spent a career humanizing people and telling human interest stories around the game of baseball. And you meet people's parents. I was able to interview countless relatives, moms, dads, wives, kids, aunts, uncles, cousins, minor league coaches, little league coaches, college coaches, big league coaches, you name it. You spend time developing all these relationships. So I was able to have a pretty good-sized Rolodex throughout those years. And I collected all my pictures after I got let go, because I had a little bit of a bug up my ass with how it went down from the new TV station that came in and made the change. It wasn't that they made the change, it was the way they went about making that change that rubbed me wrong. And that's what spurred me to dip into my own pocket and fund this project. So we took all these pictures. I met with an author whose name is on this, Kyle Fader, who's a passionate baseball fan himself. Grew up in Chicago, loves the Cubs more than anything, but he's a Pirates plan holder, season plan holder as well. And I said, let's just call people and let's tell as many stories as we can and try to make it fun. So I started Googling the top 5 or 10 moments of every ballpark, and then I went to work and researched and figured, who do I know that's connected with every moment? And if I didn't know someone, I called somebody who I thought knew someone. And we were able to put 120 people into this book. So I'll tell you a couple stories. And if anybody has any questions about any ballparks or anything, stop. This isn't me giving a lecture. Stop me and ask. If there's any stories you want to know, certain ballparks, certain players, certain coaches, anything, I don't know that I'm going to have the answer to every question, but I'm happy to answer to the best of my ability. So, and this is what makes baseball great, are the stories that you tell along the way, such as this one. Anybody recognize who the baseball player is on the right? It's not a trick question. This was in 2016, September of 2016.
Trevor Williams?
Yes, it is. That is Trevor Williams, who is still a major league pitcher to this day. That's his father, Richard Williams. That is a moment that went viral. And that was after his major league debut. Trevor grabbed the game ball and gave it to his dad. And Richard starts crying and hugs his son. He starts crying as he hugs Trevor. After kissing his wife and son, gives his dad his first major league game ball that he has. And that was in September. And in December of 2015, 10 months prior, Richard Williams was diagnosed with a regressive form of cancer. And he was given 60 to 90 days to live. Yes, he underwent an aggressive chemotherapy and radiation regimen. And he decided to go through it. And still to this day, Richard Williams gets on a plane and tries to catch every single Trevor Williams start that he can, because he used this as bonus time. And I have a great story about Richard being in San Diego as a Padres season ticket holder and what that's like. And he was able to watch Trevor pitch in San Diego when he never thought he would even be alive to see his kid pitch a Major League Baseball game. So these are the moments that connect people. The ability to humanize these players, because you watch them every day. You see how great they can throw a baseball. You see how great they can catch a baseball. You see how great they can hit a baseball. But a lot of people don't realize the stories that are behind it. Everybody has a story. Everybody was playing Little League Baseball, I'm sure, like most of us played in our careers. They just have to be a lot better than we were at it. So here's another one. On the left is Roberto Clemente's grandson. On the right is Danny Murtaugh's great-grandson. And they became friends through Roberto Clemente Jr. and Tim Murtaugh, who is Danny's grandson. So I don't know if I say grandson. That is Danny's great-grandson. Did I say that right the first time? So they live in D.C. Roberto III lives here, or not here, but he lives in Pittsburgh. And they were able to develop a real good friendship. So it's kind of cool to see those two kids, you know, descendants of some of the great Pirate figures of all time. Danny Murtaugh, of course, led the Pirates as the manager to the 1960 and 1971 World Series. I was talking about the Vin Scully story. That's Boyd Robertson on the right, who is Vin's right-hand man. He was Vin's stage manager for 28 years. So I called him and I said, Boyd, what is it like being Vin Scully's right-hand man? What's it like standing a foot away, right next to Vin, for 28 years? And there's a page in it, in the Dodger Stadium chapter, in Sacred Grounds, talking about it. You'd be surprised how well Vin, or maybe you wouldn't be, with how well Vin treats people. So this is a friend of mine, is a young girl, Ariel Epstein, grew up a diehard Yankees fan because of her grandfather, Martin Cohen, who took her to games when she was a kid. And she said everybody wanted, a lot of my friends, a lot of my classmates, they wanted dresses. She said, I wanted a Derek Jeter jersey. Her grandfather took her to 20 consecutive Yankee opening day games. And they formed an incredible bond, so I was able to do a story about this. And the story starts with Ariel being 3 years old. Her grandfather took her to meet Joe DiMaggio. And if you look in the book and in this picture, you see Joe's right hand touches her shoulder as he's saying hello. That day, right after DiMaggio touched Martin's granddaughter's shoulder, he said to her, you're destined to have a life in baseball. And she became a huge fan, and she ended up on MLB Network doing reports from Yankee Stadium. And now she's known as the prop queen. She's a sports gambling analyst to this day, so she was fortunate to tell us the story. Sadly, Martin passed away during the 2024 season, and she was able to share her memories of her late grandfather with me in the book, and I was honored to be able to tell her story. And she was able to be, she actually connected me. These are the bleacher creatures in Yankee Stadium, and we were able to talk to them as well and talk about, you know, doing the roll call. This is a guy named Martin Chapman who leads the roll call at Yankee Stadium. So we included everybody in this book. We talked to fans, we talked to players, we talked to coaches, we talked to broadcasters. Press Dining Server from Cincinnati is in the book. There's a lot of people that are in there. So there's just so many human interest stories. A buddy of mine, Craig Minervini, broadcaster for the Miami Marlins, he introduced Jose Fernandez to Larry King. Larry King wanted to meet Jose Fernandez. For whatever reason, he's a big baseball fan, so we took him over. Just different stories you can share, you know, in your time in baseball. This guy right here, it's my buddy Joe Douglas, his son Tommy. That's my buddy Cliff. My buddy Cliff, who's a camera guy, still shooting Pirates games to this day. Joe Douglas is a former Major League Baseball general manager. Or excuse me, it's Major League Baseball. He was the GM of the New York Jets for 6 years. He got fired a couple of years ago, now he's working with the Eagles. But he grew up in the Richmond, Virginia area as a diehard Orioles fan. And Cal Ripken was his idol growing up. And he had never met Cal. But one night, when he was a scout for the Baltimore Ravens, Joe Douglas was, they suffered a crushing loss in 2011, an NFC Championship game. Ray Lewis was given a speech after the game. And they kneeled down to say a prayer, and Joe just grabs the hand of whoever was next to him. He didn't even look, he just grabbed the hand. He said, man, this is a humongous hand. He gets up from the prayer, he's holding Cal Ripken's hand. Cal Ripken was in the Baltimore Ravens locker room after they suffered a soul-crushing defeat at the hands of the New England Patriots in 2011. So that's another cool anecdote we tell him. This son, this guy right here, Tommy's about to be a tight end to the University of Florida next year. He has his own career. The other thing about this is the story behind the story. So you remember the night Cal Ripken broke Major League Baseball's consecutive games played record. Bill Clinton was at the game that night. So instead of talking to Cal, who everybody's heard from, I talked to the guy that played third base next to Cal the night he broke the record. And he shared some personal pictures about President Bill Clinton coming through the clubhouse and how they had to take a knife out of Randy Meyer's locker because he was the big hunter. And Secret Service was not allowing knives in the clubhouse while President Clinton was in there. So he was able to share this picture, and he shared some personal mementos. And it's pretty cool, just pictures of him playing next to Cal that he got. Just the newspaper the next day, the Cal autograph for him. a picture when they paused the game to congratulate Cal and honor him during that game when the game became official. And he signed it, "Huey, get out of the way, will you?" Which is pretty cool. This story is not in the book, but it just goes to show you that Major League Baseball players are just like us. So, I don't know if any of you have daughters. Anybody recognize the lady in the middle? Kind of a little bit of a trick question. Somebody named Idina Menzel. Does anybody know who Idina Menzel is? She's a singer. She sings the song Frozen. Familiar with Frozen? The, if anybody, well, I guess your daughter's young enough, but Frozen is a popular Anna and Elsa. So the two little girls she's taking a photo with are Glenn Perkins' daughter. Glenn Perkins was a 3-time All-Star closer for the Minnesota Twins. This picture was taken in the Twins clubhouse right before the 2014 All-Star game. Menzel was singing the national anthem. So she's down on the field. Glenn Perkins walks up to her and says, "Idina, my daughters would lose it if they met you. Can they please come down and say hello to you and take a picture?" She says, "Sure, but you know what I really want? I really want a ball autograph by Derek Jeter." Because 2014 was Derek Jeter's final year in the big leagues. They honored him during this All-Star game. Gave his flowers. So here's Glenn Perkins, who didn't know Derek Jeter personally, grabbed a baseball, walked up to Jeter in the clubhouse. He's like, "Derek, hello, I'm Glenn Perkins. Can you please sign this ball so my daughters can meet Idina Menzel?" And it ended up getting done. So these are just some of the cool stories that go on behind the scenes, and we were fortunate to share a few of these stories. But I remember the drummer in Cleveland. His name was John Adams. Wonderful man, passed away a couple of years ago. Battled cancer for a while. But they cut off his section of bench and put it in Heritage Park beyond center field at Progressive Field. So if any of you ever go to Cleveland for a baseball game, make sure you walk out there. It's amazing, Heritage Park. And you'll see, this is a replica, a bronze replica of John's drum. His actual drum is at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown on display for fans to see. But the Cleveland Indians / Guardians, they took his section of bench where he sat, put it in the outfield, created a bronze replica, and gave him a patch. He bought it at a yard sale. And I'm completely drawing a blank on the year, but the story is in the book, and it's amazing to see how teams pay tribute to some of their great fans that they've had come across over the years. Shohei Ohtani, remember a couple of years ago, he had his 50-50 game. Many people call it the greatest baseball game ever played. He, had 6 for 6, 3 homers, 10 RBIs, I believe it was that day. Now, 1 homer came off a position player, but still, stole his 50th base, hit his 50th homer in the same game in Miami. So I called my former broadcast partner, Tim Neverett, and asked for his score sheet that game and see what it was like to witness a 50-50 game. And here are notes that broadcasters write down or that they have passed to them during the course of the game. He just kept making history after history after history, and he has 7 post-it notes from that game alone that Shohei Ohtani played in Miami. And then we got the cover page with a bunch of photos, the scenic photos from all 30 ballparks. Forward written by Jana Marie Smith, who's a ballpark designer. And here's another cool one. Anybody have any questions so far? I feel like I'm just yapping. Anybody have any questions? Anybody? Should I shut up yet? Everybody good for John?
Least favorite ballpark?
Least favorite. I usually get asked, what is the favorite? The least favorite for a TV reporter? You might be surprised at the answer.
Boston.
Who just said that? Holy hell, that is it. That is exactly right. Well, the worst ballpark for a visiting TV reporter, I think for a home reporter too, is Boston. Here's why. The camera well, the stadium was built in 1912. So there's only so much you can do with that infrastructure, and you can't widen the footprint of Fenway Park. But the camera well is so tiny and so cramped, and Boston, the Red Sox get such a large amount of media coverage that there's always still photographers. There's multiple TV outlets. There's multiple cameras in there, and you're in this tiny little camera well on this uncomfortable stool. I don't know what hurt worse, my back from sitting against the concrete wall or my ass from the awful stool that I was sitting on by the 7th or 8th inning. And we really didn't win many games there, so not only that, my ass is sore, my back is sore, and we got our ass kicked during the game. So from the time the first pitch was thrown, I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there at Fenway Park. Although, Fenway Park is an amazing place, and it's got amazing history in it. Fenway Park is the most uncomfortable in my experience. Miami is a not too distant second, because they have a not very comfortable camera well either. So yeah. That's, if any of you follow hip-hop music, a group called Public Enemy. I don't know if any of you have heard of group Public Enemy. That is Chuck D, who was the founding member of that group. He and a guy named Flavor Flav, they formed this group. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Chuck is a huge baseball fan, and I had a chance to interview him in 2023, and his producer is a Pittsburgh guy who loves baseball and loves the Pirates. And I said, hey, I would love to talk to Chuck a little bit more about baseball. And as it turns out, Chuck D is also, he's not only an artist with a microphone, he's an artist, literally an artist in drawing. And he drew sports figures when he was a kid. And he learned how to draw characters from reading Baseball Digest. You guys remember Baseball Digest? You have to, right? Because that was my Bible when I was a kid. And it was an amazing publication that has been reincarnated, and it now comes out every 2 months. And Chuck had seen an issue of Baseball Digest sitting in his camp. So he would grab it, he would read it, and he would start to draw in his free time, and that's where he learned to create artwork. So fortunately for me, he sent me a bunch of his drawings. There's Bob Boone. The first one was Greg Luzinski. Bob Boone. Here's one with, I don't even know who it is. Jim Wynn. And then he's got Joe Morgan here, Jerry Royster, Dan Dreesen. Here's another one, Downtown Ollie Brown. And I was fortunate enough to get Chuck to write a feature in my book. Not only that, but he shared a lot of his artwork when he was a kid with me. These are drawings that he made in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s. And it's really cool to have it. Bill Veck. And then he shared it, we have it in the book with him telling a story about how he was the first guy that made baseball hats famous in hip-hop and rap music. Because he would always wear his hat the way it's meant to be worn, just like his heroes wore it on the baseball field. And that's why he wears the hat the way he wears it. Here's drawings of Bob Watson, Rod Carew, and Pops, Willie Stargell. So I'm honored to have him there. We talk about the legend of John Borman, about a guy who was in single A. He was a backup catcher in single A, batting like 130 something. Had absolutely no chance of making it to the big. No chance. He was a backup filler guy. Does anybody remember the story of John Borman? Probably doesn't ring a bell. It was 2017, April 2017. He's getting ready to play a game in Port Charlotte against the Tampa Bay Rays affiliate. Well, Francisco Cervelli had gotten dinged the night before, woke up, didn't feel good. Pirates didn't have a backup catcher. Oh no, we're in trouble. What are they going to do? Well, Elias Diaz was in Indianapolis, and by the time Cervelli realized he didn't feel well, it was physically impossible to get Elias Diaz from Indianapolis to Miami for one game. So what they do? They need to get a catcher that they could expose to waivers and that they were positive would not get picked up by another team. So they took the backup single A catcher. He got in a car, hauled ass across the state, ended up getting there in the third or fourth inning, and he ended up getting an at-bat in the ninth inning as the Pirates were getting beat 10-3. Josh Harrison gave up an at-bat to get this guy one at-bat in the big leagues. He ended up getting placed on the 40-man roster, which gives you 2 years of coverage when you're a Major League Baseball player. I think he got $40,000 one year, and I think he got $50 or $60 the next. He ended up buying his engagement ring, which ended up making a down payment on his house because of one day that he ended up getting called up and he struck out against Harleen Garcia in his one at-bat in the big leagues. So, what's that? Oh, I thought somebody asked a question. So, it's kind of a crazy story. So it's little stuff like that. There's so much that goes on around the game of baseball, outside of the wins and the losses, the balls and the strikes, the homers and the outs. Then that's what we try to capture. So this is kind of where you're going to go through this journey, you know, depending on how much you love baseball. Joe Buck. I worked with Joe at Fox Sports when I started my television career, and I asked him, what's it like growing up as Jack Buck's kid? and he talked about getting in trouble running around the old Bush Stadium, and how he was told to stay out of certain areas when he was a kid, only to go in those areas, and that is where he got his discipline, by stepping in the wrong parts of the old Bush Stadium when his father was broadcasting games. This is Milwaukee. The only ballpark in Major League Baseball that has a punching bag in the dugout bathroom. So guys can take out their anger on this punching bag instead of slamming helmets, slamming bats, slamming gloves, ripping stuff apart. So it's another cool little access photo. A lot of big photos. So opening day 2025 last year. Pictures from St. Louis. Got an essay from Mary Allers, local meteorologist on KDKA TV. Talks about what it's like, how weather impacts baseball games across the country. The pool in Arizona. My best buddy, who we do a Sacred Grounds podcast now, and they got so hammered at the ballpark. Same guy that made my book. He organized a group of about 30 guys to come out 2 years in a row. They got so hammered that water started splashing onto the field through some bad piping that they had. Had too many beers, had too much fun, ended up getting uninvited back to Chase Field because they had a little too much fun. Had a little fun with that story. Had a chance to, Mike Bassett was my broadcast partner with the Texas Rangers. Does the name Mike Bassett ring a bell to any Pirates fans out there? Mike Bassett, B-A-C-S-I-K.
Did you give up a Bonds homer?
He gave up Barry Bonds' record-setting homer. We've all heard from Barry Bonds. What about the guy that gave up the homer? Started his media career. He gives up the homer. Bonds was obviously a legendary bad human being with how he treated people in baseball. Maybe he's changed, I don't know, but I've yet to meet somebody who, they all talk about what a great player he is, what a great player he was, but he didn't treat people very well. So I said, hey, did you have to do a lot of autographs and stuff with Barry? He said, no, he's so unpopular, people don't really want him because he's not easy to work with. Well, he does a couple autograph signings, does a couple interviews. Now he's the lead TV analyst for the Texas Rangers and does a radio show in Texas. So giving up Barry Bonds' 763rd homer helped launch his post-playing career in baseball. His dad played the big leagues as well. Mike Bassett Sr. had a couple cups of coffee. Here's the Calvin story that night. And then the other cool part of this, I'm big into military and paying respect to our servicemen and women. And a guy named Mitch Harris, first player ever from the Naval Academy to reach the big leagues. Tracked him down to talk to him. First guy from West Point in the Army, made his Major League debut against the Pirates in 2017. His name is Chris Rowley. Was able to track him down. Got a story from a friend of mine that spent a life in football, Brian Baldinger, talks about the pace of football versus the pace of baseball. And this is one of the wildest things you'll ever see in baseball, this picture. This is the tunnel that leads from the visiting clubhouse to the field at the Oakland Coliseum, the late great Oakland Coliseum where the A's are no longer playing. And it was a beauty of a stadium, partially because it was so terrible, outdated, and uncomfortable. But that's a fan walking up. That's the door to the visiting clubhouse. The fans and players had to share a tunnel, skinny, like as skinny as this doorway, maybe about 1.5, maybe about from here to about here. That's what they shared, walking to the field. Could you imagine Aaron Judge walking through this cramped tunnel with a bunch of fans wanting to trash talk him? And players, security tries to keep the tunnel clear when players are coming out right before the game, but it's impossible to really police it because players at all times are running to and from the dugout in the clubhouse. And you had to go up 2 flights of stairs, one of them a pretty good-sized flight of stairs, so it was a hell of a walk. And they were separated by this stanchion that might be at least 50 years old, at least. And one little row separated the players from the fans getting to their luxury seats at the Coliseum. And I don't think there was much luxury about that place. Questions? Observations? Anything so far? Good? So, this is a story about Dwayne Wise, who robbed a homer. Mark Burley threw a perfect game in 2009. Dwayne Wise was hungover, went in as a defensive replacement First battery, top of the ninth inning, Gabe Kapler, he robs a homer, Mark Burley throws a perfect game, and he's honored on the wall where it says the catch on the spot where he made that catch. Track down Larry Doby Jr. A lot of people know who Larry Doby was, right? Broke the American League color barrier 81 days after Jackie Robinson broke Major League Baseball's color barrier. He did it with the Cleveland Indians. So I called Larry, who spent a lifetime as a music guy. He traveled with Billy Joel as a technician, an audio tech, with Billy Joel. Larry Doby's son and Billy Joel are like this. Traveled together for like 40 years. Larry doesn't travel with him anymore, but he did for a long time. I said, what is it like being Larry Doby's kid? What did he tell you? He said, if you want to read about what happened, I'll leave that for the history books. You can track that down yourself. But as my son, I'm going to tell you about the good guys. So the only people Larry Doby told his kids about were the guys that treated him well. Bob Lemon, Steve Gromek, all these other players that they had, and that's how he treated his kid. And I'll leave with a couple other funny stories. So Mike Trout was drafted 25th overall in 2009. The Angels were drafted 24th and 25th. They had 2 picks in a row. So Eddie Baines, a longtime scout, pitched a little bit in the big leagues too, was the scout that signed Mike Trout. He goes to his GM, Tony Reagans, and says, this guy's can't miss. I can't believe we even have a chance to get this guy at 24. So they're negotiating, as it always happens. Right before the draft, scouts are talking to the agents, talking to the players. How much money will you take? Because he's got to go back to his GM and say, he wants too much money. Or he says he's going to take the money we're offering him so we can draft him. So somehow, during the course of the conversation, the agent for Mike Trout pisses off the scout that signed him. Negotiating, haggling over money. Eddie goes back to the GM and goes, you know what? I've had enough of this shit. We're drafting him 25th. Just to stick it to him, we're not picking him 24th. Ended up costing Mike Trout about $32,000 in signing bonus money. All because the scout angered, the agent angered the scout the night before the draft. That was his little kind of screw you that he did to Mike Trout because of his agent. Safe to say, Mike made up for that with a hell of a career and signed a contract worth a lot of money. And that's pretty much the vibe of the book. We went to Cooperstown, did a chapter on the Baseball Hall of Fame. That's Paul Hogan, my buddy, who named the book. And ended up being a pretty cool project. My design team put a checklist in there for people who visit each ballpark, the date. There's a note page on the other side for it. And this is the page from Mario's with a picture of us, picture of the napkin, and a quick version of the story of how it all happened. So that's essentially the tour you get. I'm open, questions, comments, concerns, anything you have, anything you want to know, I'll answer to the best of my ability. Otherwise, I thank you all for having me. I've got copies here if anybody would like to buy them. I cannot take credit cards here. I can do it online and refund the shipping cost to you. The book is $55. If you pay it here, I can knock $5 off down to 50. I'm happy to sign any copy you want, but I have boxes right here. And thank you, John. Thank you, Dan. Thank you all. It's awesome. And I would love to play some Dartball one of these days. I feel like it'd be a hell of a good time to do.
Thank you, Robby. Yes.
What's that? Oh, yeah, it's amazing. I wish I had a chance to play it.
Move on here.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
We'll do our team awards here. We'll start with our second place team as Paul gets that out. you a man who needs no introduction.
First of all, I'd like to welcome you to the 2026 Dartball Draft. The 26th pick goes to Tyrone, and Tyrone with the 26th pick takes Jack Duggar. We're the league champion, Trinity Methodist Church. Tournament runner-up, Brian. Marty. If you guys didn't watch this playoff on YouTube or whatever, this is one of the best playoffs I've ever seen. The first 3 games were one run. It was amazing. It was. Turn around, please. Who's your black? There you go. And the tournament champions, Reform. That's so forget it. Come on, Pat.
Alright, we'll go over our league leaders here. I want you guys to look over the stats, make sure I got everything right. We did have one error. If you look at the league leader for at-bats, there was confusion with Paul Allshouse's at-bats. So take a pencil and cross his name out. So the league leader at at-bats is Sean Olway from Lutheran. We don't give an award for that, so Sean, congratulations. Congratulations, Sean. You're also in the record books, as you have 5 double plays. That's the most ever, 20 feet. You also have he's the best. Of course he is. Of course he is. You can tell him we recognize him. We had another record tied for 20 feet. As Mike Bigham had 8 errors, he tied Artie. Congratulations, Mike. You agree? Okay, so, our league leaders. There he is. You missed your big moment. You missed your big moment, Sean. You missed your big moment. You led the league in at-bats. Congratulations. You don't get anything, but... Alright, our league leaders. Batting average. It's hard to believe, but Alan Crawford led the league in batting average at .695. His 4th title in a row, his 12th overall. Somebody want to come up and get it for Alan? We give away 8 league leader plaques. This year it's 7 different. One guy led in 2 different categories. Hits and doubles. For the first time, Bill Thomas from UP hits and doubles. Bill's first title of any kind, UP's first title in hits and doubles since Tom Crawford did it in 1981 and 1982. Runs scored. Teammate of mine, Bob Clark. I don't think I brought you in too many times, Bob. I think I left you
No,
on.
thankfully, Johnny's.
Johnny, yeah. But Bob scored 119 runs. It's the seventh time he's led the league in runs. And the reason Bob led in runs was because Johnny Malone from Reform had 126 RBIs. And I know he never brought me in once this year. Guaranteed.
The unfold days.
Congratulations. Another one from the Department of Redundancy Department, singles, Arlo Rimmel, 144, his 8th title, 5th in a row. Arlo?
Son!
Dad, can I get it here?
Now this next fellow that led in triples was 78, Glenn Heller. We need to also thank him for all the work he does, videotaping things, the weekly newsletter. Now, home runs. We had a very spirited home run race this year that Mike Corral from New Hope won with 38. Okay, now we'll go to the Hall of Fame. Somebody asked me how long we had done the Hall of Fame, and I really didn't remember when it started, so I looked it up. The first time we had a Hall of Fame in the program was 1997, with 119 members. It probably took me 3 years to get that all added up and calculated to finally put it in. But now we have 215 members, so we've grown. Well, you look at those numbers. If you look at that page, page and a half now of all the Hall of Famers, that's a lot of numbers. And every now and then, there'll be somebody tied. But after another year, it would become untied because somebody would keep going. But there was one number. If you look at 1,237 for years, first it was Bob Huff, tied by Bob Sigwald. And it stayed that way, those two numbers stayed that way forever. So this year I'm doing the numbers again, and I add Ron Koshock's number to his total. He's at 1,237. And I do Jared Rumbaugh. He's at 1,237. And they all play for Tyrone. You guys better be playing that number in the lottery, 1, 2, 3, 7. But in all honesty, we have, the Hall of Fame goes from 1,000 to over 7,000. If you would randomly ask for 215 different numbers, the chances of one number having four the same, I'm not a math major, but I bet it's pretty rare. So I just wanted to bring that up as, I look at these numbers all the time. I'm like, wow, four of the same number. But anyhow, we go on. Okay, our Hall of Fame this year. As you know, once you get an extra, you get 1,000, I'll give you a certificate. But once you get to another level of 500, I'll give you another one. So at 4,500, right here from Everson, Bill Burkhart. But if you don't show up for this at the banquet, you lose 500. So. All right. Also at 4,500, from Alverton, Tom Ottenberg. At 4,000, from St. John, Jim Suter Sr. At 3,000 hits, our league treasurer, from Hickory Square, Brad Harrington. Dropping down to 1,500, 1,500 from Everson, Dave Gaborka. Also at 1,500, the Trinity Methodist, Ralph Ermine. Also at 1,500, and also from the Trinity Methodist, Sonny Porter. Also at 1,500 from New Hope, Tom Badger. And at 1,500 from Alberton, Shirley Fox. And then, okay, Charlie. Alright, we had 5 guys join the Hall of Fame this year with 1,000 hits. Luther and Howard Kiefer. From St. John, Chris Jones. He's not here. Yeah, he's not here. From Everson, Steve Burkhart. From Reformed, Lou Falk. And the last one, welcome to the Hall of Fame, Benediction Savior.
We'll see you next season.
Take your chair when you leave, just take your chair to the back. We're gonna put it